Yo, what's up, y'all? Today we're talking about an extremely important topic that I can talk all day about. So it's actually might be two videos, so I hope you guys can tune in for both. We're talking about a bacterial infection that infects 2/3 of the world's population. That's literally billions of people out there. We're talking about H. pylori. And now H. pylori is more prevalent in some of the lesser developed countries in the world, but even still in the United States, 35 to 40% of us have H. pylori. In the UK and Canada, anywhere from 20 to 40% of their population have H. pylori. And so a lot of those people have no idea they have it. They've got all kind of symptoms, and a lot of them are watching this video right now. So let me tell you about some of the symptoms of H. pylori, and I'll give them to you in alphabetical order because I'm about to read them. Abdominal pain, acid reflux and heartburn, which is what we're talking about today, anemia, stank breath, chest pain, constipation, diarrhea, gastritis, which is inflammation of the stomach lining, nausea and vomiting. You can also have anxiety and depression going on. Those are very common today. Fatigue and low energy is extremely common. Headaches and migraines, PMS, sinus problems, skin problems like rosacea and hives, sleep problems like insomnia, the inability to fall asleep, inability to stay asleep, weight gain, weight loss, and in the long term, H. pylori can cause autoimmune conditions where the body starts to fight itself. It can cause stomach cancer, it can cause heart disease, osteoporosis, and most often it causes ulcers like stomach ulcers and duodenal ulcers. If you got those type of ulcers, the likelihood that you have H. pylori is pretty high, so you should get tested. In order for us to fully understand how H. pylori works, I got to give you guys some anatomical background. We're going to talk about the stomach. Of course, when you chew and swallow food, it goes to the esophagus and then it lands in the stomach. And the stomach kind of looks like this. It's got kind of like a J shape going on. And inside the stomach, that food that you swallow is going to get mixed and it's going to get churned and whatnot. And it's pretty much going to get turned into soup. And that's what we call chyme. And the primary tool that your stomach uses to turn your food into soup is stomach acid. Stomach acid is very, very good for you. It breaks down your food, primarily your proteins. The proteins that you eat are made up of long strands of amino acids. So the acid breaks that down into the different amino acids so your body can absorb and utilize those proteins or those amino acids. It's also really important because since it's so acidic in your stomach, again, it is acid, and that acid can actually burn a hole in your carpet and burn a hole in your clothes, and if you touch it, you'll burn your finger. It protects you from organisms that might be coming in. Organisms that want to infect you, like parasites and fungus and bacteria. And so it is kind of like your first line defense against those things. And so again, stomach acid is good for you. It's not something to be messing around with. So check this out. Inside of your stomach, you've got something called parietal cells. You guys see all those P's that I drew in there? Those are parietal cells. Don't mind the thumbtacks right now. We'll get to that later. But parietal cells are in the stomach lining, and they actually make your stomach acid. So they're extremely, extremely crucial. Now, that kind of begs the question, if the stomach is so acidic, then why doesn't that acid actually eat up the stomach lining? And that's because your stomach also produces a mucosal lining there. I'm going to use a little bit of palm oil and give you guys a little visual on this. Hang on 2 seconds. And I don't have anything to wipe this on. That's great. I'll have to use this piece of paper. And so your stomach actually has a lining or a mucosal lining that separates the stomach wall from the actual acid in there. So it's pretty cool. Now, that also kind of begs the question, well, if your stomach is so acidic, and if that acid is supposed to protect you from bacteria, and H. pylori is a bacteria, then how do you become infected with it? That's a really good question. I'm glad you asked. Well, the thing that happens here is, like, have you guys ever watched like Saturday morning cartoons? And like the bad guys, or maybe even the good guys, they made something called a force field. Like, you can't touch me, I got my force field and whatnot. That's what H. pylori do. They make an enzyme called urease. And what urease does is it makes this little cloud around the H. pylori that actually buffers the stomach acid. And so it's got its own little force field, its own little bubble, so it can't be touched. So what the H. pylori look like are like corkscrews. They have a corkscrew appearance. And what they do is they use the end of that corkscrew to kind of dig into your stomach lining. So check this out. That's what they do. The thumbtacks I put in here represent what the H. pylori do. They embed themselves into that stomach lining. Now this can cause some serious problems, right? Number one, they're going to damage the lining and they're going to damage those parietal cells. Remember, I said a few minutes ago, the parietal cells make the hydrochloric acid. So what may happen here is that because the parietal cells are damaged, it's going to reduce the amount of acid that your stomach can produce. Now that becomes a problem. First of all, it makes the environment more hospitable to organisms like H. pylori, right? It also allows for maybe parasites and whatnot to come on in and do their dirty work and to get down in places where they're not supposed to be. And also it's going to reduce the breakdown of the food that you bring in. Now that's going to be a problem because you're going to get nutritional deficiencies. You're going to get food sitting in your stomach that just kind of putrefies because there's not enough acid in there to break it down, which can actually cause heartburn as well as reflux. And usually the doctor says, well, it's too much acid in there. But that doesn't make sense, you know, because what's happening is that since there's not enough acid in there, the food's going to hang out there in the stomach, putrefy, send gas bubbles up through the esophagus, and it's going to feel like some reflux. And so it's actually not too much acid most of the time. 95% of the time it's not too much acid. It's actually not enough. And so that's definitely something to think about.